Ascent Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents HBR Guide to Making Every Meeting Matter by Harvard Business Review. Narrated by Christopher Walker.
Preface. The Condensed Guide to Running Meetings by Amy Gallo. Adapted from content posted on hbr.org on July 6, 2015. Editor's note. Here's where to start if you need to organize a meeting soon, and you don't have a ton of time to prepare, but you want to do it right. When you're not so pressed for time, take a look at the rest of the book, which expands on themes raised here. We love to hate meetings, and with good reason. They clog up our days, making it hard to get work done in the gaps, and so many feel like a waste of time. Paul Axtell, author of Meetings Matter, 8 Powerful Strategies for Remarkable Conversations, says that this is a major pain point for nearly every manager he works with. People are absolutely resigned, he says. They have given up on the hope that it could be different. Axtell and Francesca Gino, author of Sidetracked, Why Our Decisions Get Derailed and How We Can Stick to the Plan, and a professor at Harvard Business School, weigh in here on whether much of the conventional wisdom on meetings holds true. Keep the meeting as small as possible, no more than 7 people. Though research does not point to a precise number that's ideal, there is evidence to suggest that keeping the meeting small is beneficial, says Gino. For one thing, you're better able to notice body language when there are fewer people. In a group of 20 or more, you can't keep track of the subtle cues you need to pick up, says Axtell. And if you want people to have the opportunity to contribute, limit attendance. In Axtell's experience, limiting it to 4 or 5 people is the only way to make sure everyone has the chance to talk in a 60-minute meeting. The challenge with large meetings isn't just that everyone won't have a chance to talk, but that many of them won't feel the need to. When many hands are available, people work less hard than they ought to, explains Gino. Social psychology research has shown that when people perform group tasks, such as brainstorming or discussing information in a meeting, they show a sizable decrease in individual effort from when they perform alone. This is known as social loafing and tends to get worse as the size of the group increases. That's not to say that your 20-person meeting is doomed for failure. You just need to plan more carefully. The degree of facilitation has to go up, says Axtell. You have to be more thoughtful about getting input from the group and reading people in the room. You need someone who is masterful at managing the conversation. Ban devices. Both experts agree this is a good idea, for 2 reasons. First, we know devices distract us. Gino points out that many people think they can multitask, finish an email or read through their Twitter feed while listening to someone in a meeting. But research shows they really can't. Recent neuroscience research makes the point quite clear on this issue. Multitasking is simply a mythical activity. We can do simple tasks like walking and talking at the same time, but the brain can't handle multitasking, says Gino. In fact, studies showed that a person who is attempting to multitask takes 50% longer to accomplish a task and makes up to 50% more mistakes. And those who pick up their devices during meetings may well be the worst multitaskers. The research finds that the more time people spend using multiple forms of media simultaneously, the less likely they are to perform well on a standardized test of multitasking abilities, explains Gino. The second reason to ban devices is that they distract others. Gino recently conducted a simple survey that assessed whether people thought reaching for a phone, posting a status on Facebook, or writing a tweet during a meeting was distracting or socially inappropriate. The subjects found the same action to be much more problematic if their friend or colleague engaged in it, but did not find it to be very problematic when they were the ones who were, arguably, being rude, she says. These results suggest that we feel annoyed when others are on their devices during a meeting. Yet, we fail to realize that our actions will have the same effect on others when we are the ones engaging in them, she says. This is what Axtell sees in practice. People feel insulted when someone reaches for their phone, especially if that person is a senior leader. If you're presenting or talking about an idea and you see a senior manager on their phone, it hurts, he says. Still, there are some good reasons to use technology in a meeting, says Axtell. You may want to take notes or retrieve reference material. Perhaps they need to be available because something important is going on in their lives, he says. But if these circumstances don't apply to your participants, have everyone turn their devices off and pay attention. Keep it as short as possible, no longer than an hour. Research shows that there are advantages to keeping meetings short. One reason is that people stay more focused during shorter time spans. Classic studies have found that groups adjust both their rate of work and their style of interaction in response to deadlines and time constraints, says Gino. For example, one study showed that groups solving problems communicated at a faster rate and used more autocratic decision-making processes under high time pressure than they did when time pressure was low. Once people realize you're tight on time, they stop asking questions or talking and focus on getting the work done, says Axtell. This doesn't mean you should try to cram every meeting into a 30-minute slot. Axtell warns that there are conversations that necessitate more time, and you shouldn't rush over certain topics. If the purpose of your meeting is to talk through something, you need to give people enough time to voice their opinions, build on one another's ideas, and reach a conclusion, he says. Time pressure will make this more efficient, but you don't want to make the time so short that you truncate important conversations. Chapters 6 and 7 offer suggestions for ideal meeting length. Stand-up meetings are more productive. While some might feel that stand-up meetings are a gimmick, Gino points out that there is empirical data that proves they work. In one study, done in 1999, before stand-up meetings were a staple in most offices, Alan Bludorn from the University of Missouri and his colleagues concluded that stand-up meetings were about 34% shorter than sit-down meetings, yet they produced the same solutions. For a different take on stand-up meetings, see Chapter 29. Axtell finds these types of solutions encouraging. I like that people are trying to do something bold to change up meetings. Going for a walk, standing up, he says. But, he warns, don't let the format distract you from doing what really matters, running an effective meeting. I'd prefer people have the guts to say, I'm going to run this meeting well. Make sure everyone participates, and call on those who don't. Some people may want to speak up in your meetings, but feel like they can't unless they're asked, says Axtell. This may be due to cultural reasons, or language barriers, or general disposition. Axtell believes that people who hold back often have the best perspective on the conversation, and you need to draw them out. Having everyone contribute isn't just good for the end result of your meeting. It's good for the participants as well. People like to know that their opinions are being heard and considered, says Gino. And just by asking people in the meeting for their opinion, you're going to raise their commitment to the issues being discussed. For people you know may feel too put on the spot, talk to them ahead of time and tell them that you're hoping they'll contribute. That way they'll have time to plan what they'll say. Then in the meeting, you may still need to prompt them by asking for their perspective, but they'll be primed to do so. Never hold a meeting just to update people. If you're already meeting for worthwhile topics, it's okay to give a quick update, says Axtell. You might ask at the end if there's anything the group needs to be aware of, or if there's something going on in the department that others need to know about. But if you're only meeting to transfer information, rethink your approach, Axtell urges. Why take up valuable time saying something you could just send in an email? Wasting time isn't the only problem with update meetings. Gino explains that research by Roy Baumeister, Kathleen Vose, and their colleagues suggests that we have a limited amount of what they call executive resources. Once they get depleted, we make bad decisions or choices, says Gino. Business meetings often require people to commit, focus, and make decisions with little or no attention paid to the depletion of the finite cognitive resources of the participants, particularly when the meetings are long or too frequent. She finds that in her own research, depletion of our executive resources can even lead to poor judgment and unethical behavior. So, if you can avoid scheduling yet another meeting, you should. Always set an agenda ahead of time and be clear about the purpose of the meeting. It's hard to imagine more sound advice about meetings. Axtell and Gino agree that designing the meeting and setting an agenda ahead of time is critical. You should explain what's going to happen, so participants come knowing what they're going to do, says Axtell. In her book Sidetracked, Gino talks about how lacking a clear plan of action is often why groups get derailed in decision-making. Having a plan gives us the opportunity to clarify our intentions and think through the forces that could make it difficult for us to accomplish our goals, she says. Following the advice given here will ensure that the next time you need to bring a group together, you'll make it a good use of everyone's time, including your own. Amy Gallo is a contributing editor at Harvard Business Review and the author of the HBR Guide to Dealing with Conflict. She writes and speaks about workplace dynamics. Follow her on Twitter at Amy E. Gallo, Gallo. Section 1. Prepare. Chapter 1. Do you really need to hold that meeting? By Elizabeth Grace Saunders. Adapted from content posted on hbr.org on March 20th, 2015. Let's schedule a meeting has become the universal default response to most business issues. Not sure what to do on a project? Let's schedule a meeting. Have a few ideas to share? Let's schedule a meeting. Struggling to take action? Let's schedule a meeting. Although scheduling a meeting can be the right solution in many instances, it's not always the best answer. Here's a decision tree to help you quickly determine if holding a meeting makes the most sense. Figure 1-1. Should I hold a meeting? Have I thought through this situation? If no, schedule time for strategic thinking. If yes, do I need outside input to make progress? If no, schedule time for doing the work. If yes, does moving forward require a real-time conversation? If no, send an email. If yes, does this necessitate a face-to-face meeting? If no, use chat, call, or schedule a video conference. If yes, schedule and prepare for the meeting. Copy this decision tree and keep it handy. It makes it quick and easy to decide whether or not to hold a meeting. Here's what you should consider at each step. Have I thought through this situation? When you don't have clarity about what you're doing on a project, it's tempting to schedule a meeting to give you the feeling that you're making progress. But unless the meeting's intent is to structure the project, scheduling a meeting is probably an inefficient use of your time and your colleagues. Instead, do some strategic thinking. Evaluate the scope of the project, its current status, and the potential milestones, and lay out a plan of action for making meaningful progress. Once you've completed your own strategic thinking prep work, you can consider if it makes sense to hold a meeting. Do I need outside input to make progress? You may be in a situation where you know what needs to be done, and you simply need to do the work. If so, don't schedule a meeting. Update your to-do list, and take action instead. However, if after clarifying what needs to be done, you require outside input to answer questions or give feedback before you feel comfortable jumping into action, continue on. Does moving forward require a real-time conversation? If you have questions that need to be answered, but don't require a two-way conversation, email can be an excellent alternative to a meeting. This is particularly true when you're looking for feedback on your written plans or documents. It's much more efficient for everyone involved if you send over items that they can look at on their own, while you're not awkwardly watching them read during an in-person meeting, and then shoot you back feedback. If you feel your situation does require a real-time conversation, examine different communication channels. Does this necessitate a face-to-face meeting? When you need two-way communication, but don't necessarily need to see the person, you have a variety of options. An online chat can help you answer questions quickly, or for more in-depth conversations, scheduling a phone call or video conference can work well. This not only saves you the transition time of going to and from a meeting place, it also allows you to continue working if someone is late, rather than having to sit somewhere and wait for them to show up. If in the end you decide that you need face-to-face, in-person communication, then schedule a meeting, and think through in advance how you can make it as efficient and effective as possible. That means considering your intent for the meeting, establishing your desired outcomes, and preparing any materials that should be sent out or reviewed in advance. This decision-making process can help you radically reduce the number of meetings you attend and increase the amount of work that gets done. Elizabeth Grace Saunders is the author of How to Invest Your Time Like Money, Harvard Business Review Press, 2015, a time coach, and the founder of Real Life E Time Coaching and Training. Find out more at the website www.reallifee.com. Chapter 2. Stop Calling Every Conversation a Meeting, by Al Pittampalli. Adapted from content posted on hbr.org on November 3, 2015. When both a 500-attendee event and a two-person discussion are referred to as meetings, it's difficult to suss out a gathering's true purpose and to know how to prepare to make it successful. In order to have fewer, more purposeful meetings, we need a more robust vocabulary to describe them. So let's do some renaming, starting with 3 common meetings that you'll soon realize aren't really meetings at all. Meetings with just 2 people are actually conversations, whereas meetings with ample attendee lists require an agenda, plenty of preparation, and an articulable purpose. One-on-one discussions need not be as rigorous. They aren't weapons of mass interruption, and humans are naturally good at them. So keep conversations casual, and hold them as often as you'd like. Another kind of meeting that needs to be renamed is one in which work actually gets done. Management expert Peter Drucker famously noted that a working meeting was impossible. One either meets or one works. One cannot do both at the same time. And for the most part, he's right. Most meetings involve planning and coordinating the work, not executing it. But sometimes people, writers, programmers, mathematicians, do huddle around a laptop or whiteboard to do real work together. Let's call these group work sessions, and make sure to disinvite the bureaucrats. Then there are meetings where the primary goal is to generate ideas. If you want people to be truly imaginative and express themselves, don't dare call it a brainstorming meeting. Just call it a brainstorm. Since these sessions are designed to maximize creativity, it's a good idea to play a warm-up game, get people standing and active, and give people permission to have fun, free of judgment and criticism. If someone walks past the conference room and thinks you're having a meeting, you're probably not doing it right. Now let's consider a few types of meetings that are difficult to justify if you name them correctly. Take, for example, meetings that are called primarily because managers have information to disseminate. Rather than distributing a memo or having several one-on-one conversations, these bosses decide to save time by wasting the time of their colleagues, disrupting work, and corralling the team into a room together. These are convenience meetings, and almost always a bad idea. They're typically convenient for the individual and inconvenient for everyone else. Meetings called as a matter of tradition or habit, formality meetings, should also be banned. These gatherings may have served a purpose at one time, but do so no longer. Rather than considering an issue and asking, is a meeting the best way to address it, we treat the event as a given and ask, what issues do we need to address at this meeting? This ensures we always find things to discuss, no matter how trivial they are. Some meetings are called under the guise of collaboration or alignment, when it's really connection we're after. These are social meetings. Connection is a laudable goal, but meetings are a pretty lousy way to foster it. Instead, invite people to a team-building activity, a retreat, or a party, but make it optional. While the extroverts on the team might love the chance to socialize, the introverts may want to stay back and get some work done. Finally, we come to the decision-making meeting. A total misnomer, as it implies that the meeting itself is making the decision. But meetings don't make decisions, leaders do. Group discussions can help support that process, of course, so let's rename these types of gatherings decision-supporting meetings, to remind the leader that it's her job, and hers alone, to make sure action follows. It's also helpful to distinguish between high-stakes, low-stakes, and no-stakes decision-supporting meetings. In a high-stakes meeting, you want to facilitate a real, honest debate. Research shows that moderate task conflict leads to more accurate decisions. So demand candor from attendees, and encourage them to disagree. Identifying these meetings as high stakes will remind you to let the best decision prevail, even if it's not yours. When the decisions to be made are less consequential, the goal isn't to slow down, it's to speed up. Propose a plan for moving forward, and focus on generating buy-in. Of course, you should allow for disagreement, and be prepared to revise your plan if participants offer good reasons. But aim for quick resolution, so you can spend most of the time coordinating implementation. As for meetings called to support inconsequential, no-stakes decisions, they should obviously never see the light of day. Imagine a culture where people regularly talk about meetings using this kind of precise language. Picture someone pushing back on a meeting invitation by calling it a formality meeting. Envision the leader of a decision-supporting meeting asking whether her gathering qualifies as high stakes or low stakes. Think about someone canceling an upcoming staff meeting and requesting a few conversations instead. Better language isn't the only step you must take to transform your meeting culture, but it's a powerful start. Al Pinampalli is the author of Persuadable: How Great Leaders Change Their Minds to Change the World. Harper Business, 2016. Chapter 3. If you can't say what your meeting will accomplish, you shouldn't have it. By Bob Frisch and Carrie Green. Adapted from content posted on hbr.org on April 18, 2016. How many times have you walked out of a theoretically important meeting? A leadership off-site, a C-suite powwow, a sit-down with the board, thinking, that was a great discussion, but I'm not sure we really accomplished anything. More often than not, the problem lies not in what did or didn't happen at the meeting itself, but in the fact that you didn't get anything done because the goals for the meeting were never firmly established in the first place. We see this happen all the time when clients hire us to help manage offsites. Often they start by handing us a pretty well-developed and usually packed agenda, full of already booked speakers and a finalized list of confirmed attendees. Beyond logistics, the actual substance of the offsite is nearly set. But then we always ask the meeting owner, the most senior executive hosting it, the same two questions. What do you want to have debated, decided, or discovered at the end of this session that you and the team haven't already debated, decided, or discovered? What do you want attendees to say when their team members ask, "What happened at the big meeting?" In almost every case, the response is the same. "That's a good question. I hadn't actually thought about those things." It doesn't matter if it's an 8-person board meeting, a 15-person executive team meeting, a 150-person leadership conference, or a regularly recurring status meeting. Your first step when planning an important meeting should be to draft an initial set of goals based on the answers to the two questions above. In the words of Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. These objectives are not the activities you will be engaged in or the time slots on the agenda. They are more high-level, your desired outcomes for the meeting. The list needn't be very long or complicated. As a starting point, 3 to 5 short bullet points or sentences that articulate what you want to accomplish is more than enough. But this process may take some time. You could go through 2 to 3 iterations before you have a straw model set of objectives that are ready to be tested with other key meeting stakeholders, who should then be asked to review the list and identify any missing or unnecessary goals. Once everyone is aligned, agree and communicate to all other attendees that these objectives are locked in. This will help keep the agenda focused and give you cover if someone asks to add an unrelated presentation or discussion at the last minute. Here are some sample objectives from different types of meetings we've facilitated recently. Regularly recurring weekly meeting. Share updates and review progress to date, including major milestones or upcoming activities. Ask and answer, what did I do? What will I do? Identify questions and concerns related to progress. Ask and answer, what are the potential roadblocks? Prioritize and resolve issues and address additional questions. Agree on next steps. For example, escalation of issues, clear accountabilities, etc. Board meeting. Provide board input as management formulates the new 5-year strategy. Agree on how much runway remains on the current core strategy. Identify new strategies to potentially pursue. Finalize the operating model for strategic governance. Launch annual strategic planning process. Put in place long-term, 5+ year, strategic oversight. Agree on the topics and timing for additional board input into the current planning cycle. Executive team meeting. Develop a list of growth opportunities for the team to assess further. Begin to define select growth opportunities, including the future state description for each, and potential measures of success. Confirm the accountable executive and team leader for each opportunity. Understand the timeline and activities over the next 3 months. Leadership Conference. Establish the purpose and positioning of the extended leadership team. Impart a meaningful understanding of the company's vision, mission, and strategy, including top priorities for the next 3 years. Understand priority issues raised by attendees, and develop potential solutions. Align around next steps. Your list of objectives must also drive important decisions about aspects of the meeting. Agenda. Draft an agenda and map each activity to your stated goals. Do all of them help you achieve one or more of your objectives? Are there any objectives that can't be achieved through what you have planned? Attendees. The number and identity of attendees should be based on the scope and objectives of the meeting. For example, if you need to make decisions, we recommend a smaller group. If your aim is to generate ideas or achieve broad organizational buy-in for an initiative, you should invite a larger group.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?